Hi all, we are PTE for sure. We are providing complete training to successfully crack PTE Exam with your desired score. We will provide you tips and tricks to get 65 and 79 in PTE. After enrolling, our course's material would be provided online. For more information, kindly contact through WhatsApp or other details mentioned in the video.
Now the economists calculated, it's a back-of-the-envelope calculation, that removing all immigration controls would double the size of the world economy, and even a small relaxation of immigration controls would lead to disproportionately big gains. Now from an ethical point of view, it's hard to argue against a policy that will do so much to help people that are much poorer than us. The famous Rand study reckons that a typical immigrant who arrives in US ends up with $20,000 a year. That's rough. It's not just the migrants themselves who gain, it's the countries they come from. Already, the migrants from poor countries working in rich countries send home around $200 billion a year, through formal channels, and about twice as that through informal channels. And that compares to the neat $100 million that Western governments give in aid. These remittances are not wasted on weapons or siphoned off into Swiss bank accounts. They go straight into the pockets of local people. They pay for food, clean water and medicines, they help kids in school, they help start up new business. This is a kind of object that you're probably all familiar with when you had the term robot, but I'm going to show you the very first robots. These were the very first robots. They were characters in a play in the 1920s called Rossum's Universal Robots, and the play was written by Czech writer called Karel Čapek. And basically, these robots, people tend to think of robots as kind of cute cuddly toys or, Hollywood depictions kind of devoid of politics. But the first robots were actually created and imagined in a time of absolute political turmoil. You just had the First World War, it finished and had a devastating impact across Europe, and so people are kind of reflecting on what does it mean to be human, what makes us human, those kinds of question. And this kind of context is what inspired Čapek to kind of write this play. And interestingly, these robots being human, they are actually in the play assembled on a production line, a bin like the Ford manufacturing production line. So even though they are human, they are assembled, and these robots are designed to labor, and that is their primary purpose in society, to labor. In the past few years, researchers have made new discoveries about the loggerheads' migratory patterns on the East Coast. And so what happens is that turtles in the winter time will come south or sit right on the edge of the Gulf Stream. It's a really strong current, so they don't want to get into it cause it can carry them away, or they have to spend lot of energy stay in place. So then when summer comes, the north, say up around Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, when the water warms up, everything blooms. There's lot of crabs, lots of other organisms. And the turtles go up there and they take advantage of that. They fed up. And like it's cold again, they go down south. They just sort of hang out. They literally chill out for the winter time. The tagging process can't start until the turtle comes up on the beach. And great care is taken to avoid frightening it. Bald Head Island has an ordinance against residential white lights on the beach. Researchers cover their lights with red cellophane. Red is the color that turtles see the least stuff. Red is the first color you lose as you go deeper into the ocean, so that's the first color that most ocean creatures lose in the eyesight.
I have said before that you can't have a civilization that doesn't have art. When we think about the great civilizations historically, all of them had a great production of culture and art because society has failed to observe itself and the sophistication of the great. See what we were about? How would we understand what was going on in Paris at the time of the Impressionists when people were learning to see in a completely different way? Pre-cinematography, Pierre, all of these things are just emerging, and here are people looking at the world in a very different way, which was considered so radical at that time. Sample answer: this material mainly discussed that great civilizations always have a great production of culture and art because the societies failed to observe it. We would understand nothing in Paris at the time if the Impressionists didn't tell us anything through their works. Art used to be considered radical, but it indeed gives us a different way to view the world.
There's sugar in a lot of foods where you don't expect it. Of course, there's lots of sugar in donuts, of ice cream, or pastries, or other things that are sweet, candy of course, but there are other places where you see it and you don't necessarily expect it. So as an example, peanut butter. Here's a list of ingredients from Skippy peanut butter, and you see that sugar is the second most common ingredient. So that you may know from the reading food labels that these ingredients and any food labels that are listed in order of how much there is in the food itself, so sugar comes right after peanuts. Here's another example, beef stew. You wouldn't necessarily expect it to find sugar in beef stew, but it's there. Now it's down the list of ingredients, it's actually toward the end, but if you look at the marketing of this and food at the can, it says, there are fresh potatoes and carrots, but actually there's more sugar in this than there is carrots. And so you wouldn't eat something like beef stew and expect to find this to be the case. Welcome to today's lesson. We're continuing with our study of taxonomy. Taxonomy is how scientists classify organisms into different groups based on the characteristics that they share. So, for instance, a good way to think about taxonomy is the U.S. Postal Service. If we want to send a letter to someone, we first start off by addressing it to the nation they are in. By default, we usually assume that's America, but it doesn't have to be. Could be England or Costa Rica or Spain. You put their nation or their kingdom. Then within that kingdom, you address it to a slightly more specific level, their states. So, for instance, South Carolina would be the same as a phylum. And within that state, you would address it to their city and then to their street number, the street they live on. Then you would address it to, say, their apartment complex, and within that complex, you'd address it by their last name to their family, and then finally their first name to the specific person you want to get it to, and in that way, we're able to weed out all the 400 million people we don't want to send our letter to in America and pinpoint the exact person we want the letter to reach. And in the same way, scientists use a taxonomy chart to pinpoint a living creature and organism and how it relates to everything else in the world.
So that creates tensions, and that's what I want to talk about. Because I think it's important that we are, as a society, able to have an informed debate about how much privacy is enough but not too much, how much security is enough but not too much. Privacy, as a human right, that is simply quoting the Universal Declaration. In the physical world, We have gotten all kinds of protections. There is evidence that we care about our privacy. We got doors, we got obscure glass, we have got locks, we wear clothes, and we put up shutters. And technology continues to erode the privacy that exists in the real world, in the three spatial dimensions. Security cameras, automatic number plate recognition take away anonymity. Long lenses, paparazzi, take away distance and the privacy that used to create. And body scanners are increasingly being used to see through clothes, for example. This process isn't going to slow down, and the new quantum technologies are actually being able to do gravitational sensing. And that's advancing at a remarkable rate. And you can't shield gravity. So some of new quantum technologies are able already to see through walls. And there are technologies also for seeing round corners now using scattered light from lasers. Technology continues to erode privacy.
If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and also press below bell icon. Thank you.